You're almost through, like, into day 2. Are your brains, like, completely tired and fried? Are they excited and rejuvenated?
Yes.
Yes, all of the above. Woohoo! Well, we are so excited to have you in our last workshop session. As we dive into some stuff, we'll start with introductions of my great panel associates and our moderator. You want to go first?
Sure. I'm Molly Simpson. I work at Baylor University and am the assistant director for service. So I connect students mostly in sort of the local community, Waco area, to serve. So ministries, nonprofits, all sorts of other forms and functions, but that's mostly what we're doing. Yeah.
My name is Sarah Nelson. I am the Assistant Director for Missions at Baylor. So we're part of Mission Service and Public Life. And so she's local, and then I am Global Pieces. And so we work with global nonprofits, churches, partners all around, and facilitate mission trip experiences that our faculty and staff lead and get to come alongside the global church and organizations.
Awesome. I'm Brenda Sanders, and I am the Collegiate Missions Consultant for Texas Baptist and direct what's called Go Now Missions. And what we do is we send Texas college students to do mission work around the world. Last year we were in, I think it was 16 states and 23 countries.
Wow.
So my goal in life is to scatter Texans.
I'm Bailey Aber. I also work at Baylor in our missions department. So I work with supporting our mission trips and our students, getting them connected with a good mission trip fit for them. So wanted to give space for our panelists, and I just wanted to kind of start by thinking of what do you think of when you hear missions, the word missions?
You're asking us?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, do y'all have any?
I wasn't paying attention.
Sorry about that.
Can you say it again?
Yeah, what do you think of when you think of the word missions? What does that bring to mind?
Leaving your home and going somewhere. Missions is spread the gospel. Basically make disciples.
It's not leaving home for me, it's just being a missionary for Jesus wherever you are, which is the Great Commission.
I think about the Missio Dei, the mission of God, and that it's an invitation for all of us to be on this journey with God, wherever we are.
Caring for others.
Awesome. So those are all really good answers. So our panelists are experts in the area, so get some space now then to talk a little bit more about kind of missions and service and what that looks like in their lives. So,
And before we jump in, can I ask one question of you guys? Yeah. We were talking, and we all come in here, obviously with different ideas of missions and stuff, but also we just want to know what made you choose this session. I don't like that word, I can't get it out today. This session, so we can make sure we kind of hit some of the things that you want to hear and learn about. So what brought you into this room versus the other options today? Anybody?
What was the name of it again? Because it was something in the name got me.
Called, connected, and committed.
Yes. So for me personally, sorry, I guess that's who we're asking. Is I had a calling on my life for missions a couple of years ago, and being connected into the Word and being committed to the Word so that you can go out and share it. So it was really the title that kind of got me, and then I looked further and I was like, oh, there's a friend in there.
Love it.
For us, we've been serving overseas for the last decade, but have been asked to come work specifically with Baylor students to engage them in missions and ministry, both locally and globally. And we're with the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, which has a very poor relationship with BGCT, which I hope to recover someday. And so hearing from all of you and the different ways Baylor is working, Texas Baptists are working, is what drew me.
And how maybe we can connect. That's awesome. Okay, I'm just gonna confess that 3 of them I work with and one I've known since about 30 years.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm a support.
Woohoo! She's gonna be our hype up cheerleader. Yeah.
I'm in the wrong room, but I'm staying.
That's
Let's
okay.
hold it out. Oh, well.
He was too, and if you want to be in a different one, go for it.
Yeah.
No,
See, maybe it's a good thing we asked to begin.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't care.
But, well, we're glad you're staying. Hopefully we will give you great insight and entertainment and come along. Yeah,
Well,
entertainment.
since she was open and honest, I'm gonna be open and honest. Brenda was one of my students when I was associate PhD director. And whenever she's leading a conference, I always go.
I know, she is a great cheerleader.
Earl and Bubba, she looked real familiar.
Fun.
Fun.
How neat.
No. We'll talk later, sorry.
That's okay.
Homecoming.
Yeah. It is a homecoming.
All right. Well, thank y'all for sharing. We'll hopefully kind of hit some of those and just help the dialogue too as we're going through.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, so one of the goals for today is just helping that we kind of walk out of here with an understanding of some best practices to get involved with service and missions with college students, which is kind of the expertise in the room, and so that those both you as the server and those that you're serving are transformed through that service and mission. So I kind of wanted to start with Molly. So would you mind sharing some of the things to keep in mind when planning to serve or having service projects?
Sure. Perhaps just specifically out of our context, there are a lot of students that have a requirement to serve, a scholarship requirement, an organization, something like that, or they have something in them that says this is part of what I should be doing. And sometimes they just choose whatever comes before them, or they kind of like, what's close? I'm going to go to that. And so one of the things that I try to spend some time with students, whether in groups or individuals, thinking about is doing some of their self-assessment and reflection on who they are, what gifts they have, what are they passionate about. Frankly, for college students, a lot of it is around what is your time, what's your availability, where are you going to be able to show up and be consistent and reliable for someone? And if that's just occasionally, to then pursue something that an opportunity to serve that matches what you can do. Because sometimes they get very excited and enthusiastic, but then commit to something that they really are not able to be consistent with. And that, of course, creates challenges for people who are on the ministry end or the nonprofit side. And enthusiasm's great, but having sort of the schedule, availability, and skill set to match is important. So thinking about that, and then along those lines, just really trying to give voice to listening to the needs of the community. So if it's a community partner, a ministry, a church, a nonprofit, what are they seeing? What are their needs? Because as we know, when our impulse to serve sometimes is like, well, here's what I have to offer, or here's what I can bring, or I want to do this thing. And that doesn't always match the need in the community or the work that a particular partner is doing. So I just think it's important for them to kind of slow down, do a little self-assessment. And then I spend a lot of time talking to students about the importance of being consistent and dependable. And maybe this is a function of working with college students, but when at home, in their churches, from their families, someone else has planned the service thing and they sort of just show up. Oftentimes someone else has driven them to the thing, or they met at the church and got on a bus to go do something. So when they're engaging in it individually or like as adults, to try to help them think about the importance of showing up when you say you're going to be there, and being consistent and dependable, because I've realized there's a gap sometimes between when someone else has facilitated service for someone and then when people are sort of scheduling it, planning it on their own. That's actually something I would love to think with youth ministers onto. Can we nudge some of those ideas in a little earlier? Because there sometimes is a gap between what others have showed you but not explicitly taught you, and then when you're trying to take those on yourself. So I think that, and then always trying to help people become more relational in their service. So just the difference between donating food that is going to be cooked and served someplace versus standing in a kitchen behind a wall and preparing food that will be served to someone, to sitting down at a table and having a meal with someone and having a conversation with someone. Just that the opportunity for transformation grows the more the relational the service is, and the more distant you are from it, it changes us a little bit less. So those are some of the things that I really am either trying to like encourage or teach or just explicitly say, because a lot of people we're planning it, we built these into our plans, but we might not be explicitly teaching it to people to sort of embody in their own lives. So, yeah.
Thanks, Molly. That's great. And Brenda and Sarah, do you guys have any thoughts on kind of some of those points that she made, or those things that are similar that you find in missions?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll jump off. One of our biggest areas where we come in is that partner. What is the partner's need and request? And so if you are an organization and you're in a ministry, you're that nonprofit, like being wise enough to say, hey, here's what I need, and also being willing to say no to something that you don't. It's a lot of times, especially if we're talking internationally, there's a power dynamic that we know could be at play. So if I were to come to a partner and say, hey, we want to build you a water well, they might have a whole system already, they don't need it, but they're probably going to say yes, please, just because there's a power dynamic. And so I think even more of how we facilitate conversations in a ways that are asking and they're inquisitive, and someone feels the ability to say, no, that's really not what I need. I need an educator to come in and help train how to do something. And so we really work hard at that conversation. And I think as the body going out into that, making sure that that's what you're watching for. If you're trying to figure out how you're serving, or if you're in charge of students and how they're going to serve, are you asking those questions so that the partner is giving you real answers as to this is what's helpful piece?
Yeah, we call that field-driven requests, that we're never going to go tell the field what they need. Instead, we say, hey, here's some questions. You tell us what you need. And then we have the responsibility to say, oh, can we meet that need? Because sometimes students are not the best answer. And so it's also okay, and every year I tell our partners, it's okay for you to say you don't need students anymore. Perhaps your strategy has changed. Perhaps you're in a different place. Perhaps the nationals are leading it now, which is awesome, and that's what we want. Great, then let us back out of the way. So the importance of that, wow, I really want there to be field-driven requests. And then I think you also have to assess before, and whether that's individual students or even as a team or group, okay, do we really have what they need? Or what particular gifts do we have? Where does that match the need? And I think of an example years ago, our Baptist student ministry at TCU came to me and said, I really feel like the Lord is calling us. I want to do some kind of international trip. So we began to look, and I helped him come up with some questions to say, okay, let's figure out what students do you have that could possibly go? What could they possibly contribute? And this is what the crazy thing is. They discovered all these Spanish speakers, which isn't normal at TCU. All right? That would be normal at some of our other schools, but he had quite a few people, Spanish majors and so we said, wow, this is an unusual time in your ministry for you to have Spanish speakers. Is there a place? And there was a place in Spain specifically asking for some that they could do. So it's that beautiful, the match that we do. Two other points. One, I think it's important that we have opportunities that are at different levels, because you have the student who's never done, this is a first thing. Sometimes it's brand new believers. I've been a believer a week, and I think I'm supposed to be involved in what God's doing. Where they are is very different than someone who has walked with the Lord, been discipled well, maybe already has some missions experience. So we really do try to work to say, do we have entry level? You could get your feet wet and not drown. all the way to what we call edge projects. Okay, we're going to drop you off in the jungle of Indonesia, and you're going to go find the unreached people group. And so to say, because you're going to have participants, whether they're students or congregants,
Okay.
that are all those levels. So how do you find this thing? If you've got a student who perhaps is ready to be dropped off in the jungle of Indonesia can still come and sweep the church. But to grow them and keep them engaged, we got to challenge them a bit more. And I think even a step back beyond, even before this, is I think a lot of times we try to engage people's hands before we engage their hearts. And we start getting them to sign up to go do something they haven't learned yet. Like the things that we've been hearing at this missions conference, you know, the average church member and Christian does not know the things that we have heard. And so to go back and say, what are we doing in discipleship and in our teaching? How are we growing them so that they understand, why would I go and do this? How is this a response to the grace of God? So it's not just about going and doing something, it's an outpouring of what they already know. So when I'm talking to somebody in a ministry and they say, we don't have many students that want to do missions, and I say, let's talk about your discipleship, because it goes back to your discipleship. Students our church members should be responding to go because of what they're encountering in Scripture and what they're encountering in their relationship with God. So you got to start there so that you've got people that are then ready to be sent, or they can be challenged to be sent.
I think another area that's a little different, although not always, from a local setting to when we look internationally, is cultural awareness. And so you're talking about even discipleship of our heart, but also we've got to have that training for cultural awareness, because, I mean, you've got to know and start to realize, especially some of our students, although, so that's my sweet friend Valerie, we've taken mission trips with the adults who had never left Texas.
Yeah.
And so I've got 55-year-olds who've never left the Texas bubble getting on a plane for the first time and heading to Brazil. And so even as adults, so these go across the world, but we had to have some conversations on that's really not how, normal, that's Texas culture, and so what does that look like? And so, and I say that because you also should be having those conversations locally, because when I ran my inner city ministry at Kate Ross down the road, there's some different cultural differences between my suburban volunteers and what we're encountering. We just don't always think that, but it is some training pieces, but even more so if we are going to go drop them in a jungle and get them ready. And so definitely having those conversations in that, moving from just awareness to humility, and for having that posture of learning to be ready to go and do and serve in places that are not just like you. It's not your same color skin and your same demographics, but how do you prepare and get ready for that? Because it will be different.
Yeah, and not only understanding the culture of that particular people group or group, part of the city or whatever, but helping them understand that a lot of what they think is Christian is really American. And to go say, and always say, okay, but let's go back. What does Scripture say? Where do you see in Scripture that's the only way to worship? Let's go back to Scripture. Because really, we don't, even within the American church, we don't understand how much of what we do is American. And helping them understand that. But culture is such a huge thing. And again, it's not just about international.
No.
Yeah, we have students that go to school in the Valley of Texas, and when they're assigned to work at Mission Arlington, it's great culture shock to move from Edinburgh, Texas to Arlington. And it's like, okay, let's learn. Yeah.
And I think that goes back to that partner relationship, because if you're on the ground, your local partner there, if you have that good relationship, those questions and you can ask, and your students that you're sending, your congregants that you're sending, they have a safe place to ask and explore and to learn. And so as you're building what your mission strategy is and how you're sending, that's one of the things we're looking at is this relationship with our partners, because we want our students to be able to go and learn and ask questions. And so we're sending these students first time into places, and they have somebody that they can say, why are they doing that? What is happening right now? Our leaders might be asking that even if they've been numerous times, because there's always so much to learn, and that's such a beautiful piece when we have local teams that are coming and wrapping around us to be learners with them. So I think that, and that's one of my favorite things is seeing then that conversation, especially with college students, how they meet some college students and the way they, I mean, we were at my house we had Japanese, Baylor hosted a Japanese team at spring break. After we had been there the spring break before, we now hosted our first one here, learning about food insecurity. And on their last night, they came to my house. The leaders wanted them to see an American House family. I said, sorry, we'll go, not that my crazy house is going, but whatever. And so we hosted we had 6 to 8 of our college students and then 8 Japanese students. And Bailey and I just sat back and watched. They'd spent the week serving together. Most of them did not speak the same languages, but that was not stopping what they were doing. And we fed them Texas barbecue for the first time. Again, cultural experience, and we're talking about that. But it was just a beautiful way to see how we can come together and talk about what is your culture, what does this look like, and pass through some of those differences, even with language barriers. And even my 11-year-old took some of them to show his Nerf guns, and then there was a Nerf war that was transpiring in my house. And one of the Japanese students knew who the Beatles were. My husband's a Beatles fan, so they're looking at the Beatles albums. And so, again, you just never know where those connections are and pieces. But feel free to have those conversations in there. So
The phrase that I teach all of our student missionaries when it comes to culture is, it's not bad, it's different.
Or it's not wrong.
Yes, because, we say, oh, they drive on the wrong side of the road. No, they don't. They just drive on the other side. Yeah. They have now applied that to many areas of their lives. I hear about it all the time. But to just help them realize that our culture is not right. Yeah. Whatever culture you grow up in, it just happens to be your culture. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I think these are all really great points that are certainly applicable both to college students in the services that you guys do, but also, like they mentioned, to your church members and to people that you're working with on a daily basis. So thank you for sharing all of those. I think those are really great things to think about. So I'd love for you guys to speak a little bit more about how you see missions and service as transformational for the person that's doing the work. So whoever wants to start.
Well, we some of it being set within university setting. It's part of our learning objectives and the things that we're seeking to do. But I think about it and I'm like, I have students in a relationship with me for a couple of years, and I think what experiences could they have now, or what learnings could be present now that will help them be a more faithful community member in the rest of their life. And so sometimes that is an opportunity for them to reflect on the service and the engagement, the mission work, the interactions that they're having, to learn things about themselves because of that. Some of that's the cultural humility part. Some of that is instead of just doing the thing, but then it's the post-processing. So, classically on a mission trip, it's the team gathering in the evening to debrief the day, but trying to build that in with service opportunities when often it's just meet at this place, go do this thing, and then you may or may not see that person again. The university setting has been so great because it builds in communities for learning, for processing those things. So there was a student who served for the first time in an ESL setting at MCC, so McLennan County Community College here in town, and had directions, had instructions, knew when to be there and all of those things, but got totally turned around and lost and didn't find the classroom on the first night, and found somebody to help them find their way, and basically missed almost all of her service window for that evening. But then to be able to, in the classroom later, to say, well, how did that make you feel? What was that experience? What did you, how in any way is that like the experiences that people that you're going to serve have
That's good.
all the time? And so it was like an accidental, but a huge opportunity for her to learn, oh, what is it like to be in an environment that you're not familiar with, to be confused and lost and not to be able to get to where you're going, and then for her to do her own processing of that, not just like you didn't do the thing that you were asked to do, but just all the feelings that came with it, then helped her have a different understanding of the people that she was serving. And so to be able to build in that time for reflection allows for the change of the heart and the life of the person who's serving, which I think is a contribution to the kingdom, to the common good, to our communities for the long term. So when we become more faithful in our thoughts and our actions and our behaviors and our attitudes, then we're better witnesses for Christ. And so I love being with them to help dig into that. So what does that teach you? What are you learning? How is that shaping you? On the person who is serving,
I would just say, I think some of that in that transformational piece is managing expectations. So if you are facilitating it, or if you're the person that's going to serve for the first time, if you're like, okay, I'm going to go serve and it's going to be fantastic, and you show up and it's a disaster, it probably will be, because you might not know where to go. You don't know what's happening. Like, the first time you do anything, it's probably not going to go well. And so managing that expectation, whether it be for those college students that maybe you're fixing to put into a spot, or the mission trip, like, don't expect those kids to bond with you day one because you're new to them. Like, you're not going to come out with your best friend today. But when you keep showing up and you keep showing up and you keep showing up, that commitment is where then it becomes transformational for you as the person serving. And really does begin to again change and let you see things differently, let you begin to feel a part of what's happening and to do that change. And so I think managing expectation helps move into some of that transformation, because I think especially in our culture, we want the first time to be like this amazing experience, or that's what we expect. And if it's not, I don't want to go back, that was terrible, but maybe you just need to try it again, because now you know where to find it. You know the schedule for the after school program, or you know the person that you're going to work with's name at least, so you can, greet them and say hello. And so whatever that looks like the second time. And then when you go the third time, now you know even more. And so it just begins to allow you to change and to see and to serve in a way that begins to even open your heart and your eyes to how God sees that person and the work that you're doing. Because you're not so caught up in just, where am I going, what am I doing, what's the next thing?
And the ultimate transformation is to see it when they get home. What happens when they get home? Molly has the opportunity. She gets to be with them for the whole year or 2 years. And, for us, they may go for 8 weeks. They may go for 1 week. It's that kind of thing. And the truth was their transformation is what you see when they get back. And I have a beautiful example. One of my college roommates had adopted a young lady that's now 16 and went on youth mission trip this summer. And they went someplace, I don't know where. They live in Nashville. They went someplace else. And one of the things they did is they worked at a homeless shelter and they served a meal. So Jada was exposed to that on her youth mission trip. She came back and realized, oh, our church goes and serves at the local homeless shelter every week. So this year, when they were making the video encouraging people to get involved in missions, they asked Jada to make the video. And Jada talked about, until I went and did it somewhere else, I wasn't aware I could do it here. And when I look at that, I think that is transformation. And when you see someone come back and they say, you know what, I'm going to change my major because I realize I could study this other thing that could truly be useful in a kingdom setting, then that's transformation. We have a thing at spring break called Beach Reach, where students are at South Padre Island, which is Party City, if you don't know, during spring break. And we send students to go down there, and we We give them free rides so they're not driving drunk. We serve pancakes outside the largest bar in Texas every night. We have little retired men that are serving pancakes to drunk college students. It is a beautiful thing to see. And we're meeting their needs and we're loving on them, and students are learning how to love their peers and how to share with them in a caring way. And what we see happen after spring break, those students come back and they realize, if I can do it at South Padre, I can do it anywhere. We have more salvations after spring break on our campuses because students are transformed in the midst of. So we've got to look beyond. It's got to be more than a trip. Yeah, what are we doing so that when they graduate from Baylor and they get a job in San Diego, they go find a place to serve? Yeah.
I use the phrase like, I want it to move from something that someone does to who we are. It's that shift from an action to an identity, which I think is the gospel, which is discipleship, which is all of those things. It's becoming a more faithful person and participant. And so that shift, but it usually starts at some level of an action, of a doing, of showing up, and then becomes more deeply a part of identity. I mean, that probably happened for all of us too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So for our folks that are interested in getting involved in missions or helping get a mission trip or a service program off the ground in their churches, what are some practical steps that they can take that you guys have seen be successful in order to kind of get that off the ground and get it going?
I'll start. I think I can answer that in kind of a couple parts. I think the first step for you individually is, Molly said, that self-assessment. So really looking at you and looking at what are my passions, my gifts, my talents, what time commitment can I do to that? And so really taking that honest time to look at yourself. I am a firm believer that everybody has a seat on the bus. We got to figure out and put you in the right seat, because when you are serving in that seat that God created you for, man, it's going to be beautiful. But if I put you in a spot that is not at the right fit, you're going to burn out, you're going to be miserable, and it takes some reflection for you to figure out. And it may not look at all like what you thought. I think about our ministry we did for 12 years. I had a volunteer, and he served every week faithfully. And he is the quietest, nerdiest introvert you've ever met. And serving in the inner city is not his cup of tea. And every week he showed up. And I'm like, okay, and I mean for 12 years, showed up every week. And I was like, not 12 years later, but about a year in, I was like, this really isn't, you're so quiet, but he does a great job. He ran our middle school room of inner city kids, and again, it was a safe place, and so these middle schoolers kept coming, and then they kept coming into when they were high school, they would still come, and I would deal with the younger ones, and he and this other lady would take these middle schoolers, and I'm like, you keep coming, why? And he said, because I can do the math for them and help them, and no one else could. And I'm telling you, the math they had, nobody else could do. And so he would sit there and he would work with some of our girls that struggled in math. And again, he's like, yeah, because otherwise, this is not mine. But he knew that that's where he was gifted, and he had that ability, and he loved to be able to share that. And I sent him a screenshot, actually, this summer. One of the girls that he worked tirelessly on all through had 8 college acceptances. Oh, wow. And I sent a screenshot of that from Facebook from the mom. I was like, this was all you. The only reason the girl passed math was because of him. And so him finding that seat on the bus that he never thought to try, except that I can volunteer you into just about anything. He did, and he kept, and he found his place. And if we can all find our place to serve, man, you talk about what this kingdom could look like, and how, you saw Christine Kane last night in that passion. If we're finding and serving in our right places, that's each of us, right? So then, if your job is facilitating college students, helping them find that right spot. If it's helping your congregation find the right spots and get everybody in that right spot on the right bus, the kingdom is going to just blow out, and you will see that. You'll see that transformation. But we all got to find where we're serving. We got to find your wheelhouse. And so I say start with that. Start with that self-assessment. Again, if you're leading programs, starting with that with whoever you're leading into that mission experience is the first step.
I think if you're starting out a ministry, just do something. I was part of a church plant. Our church is no longer small, but it was a house church when I joined. And the majority of the people in this house church were newer believers. They had not been exposed to missions. They didn't know anything about that. They didn't know about tithing or giving or anything like that. So we're just starting from scratch. The very first thing we did is one Sunday we asked everyone to bring a brand new clean pair of socks we were going to donate to the homeless shelter. Well, they could understand that. And then we moved on a little bit more and we were like, oh, Christmas time, everybody bring a teddy bear, because we had someone who worked in the foster system. People could understand, bring a teddy bear. We worked up to, we're all going to, everybody donate $5. We're buying Bibles, Spanish Bibles. But we started where we were with something little, and they could do that, and then they could do that. And then eventually we moved into, hey, now we're going to go and serve at the place we bought the Bibles for. And eventually, and now we send missionaries all over the world. But it started with something. So if you're part of a ministry that's not really doing something, what can they do? And then you take it another step and another step. Isn't that what Jesus did with the disciples? So we just do what Jesus did. I mean, we don't have to come up with a plan. Just read the Bible. He got the plan.
Yeah, that's great. So I wanted to pause here and see if anyone else has any other specific questions that you would like to ask our panel, anything that you're wondering more about. We do have a couple of questions we can keep talking through, but if there's anything specific you want to hear, I'd love to give them the opportunity to speak into those things.
I have a question. For Go Now Missions, you mentioned week-long trips, 8 week-long trips, and then you said Edge. Can you just explain what those options are for college students?
Sure. We have what we call, we have Christmas break missions, so during Christmas break. And those will be anywhere from 1 week. We have some that'll be gone the whole Christmas break, like they're actually gone over Christmas. I led a team to Athens, Greece last Christmas, and we were working in the refugee camp. So we were gone during Christmas. So we have Christmas break trips, and then during the summer, we have what we call impact teams. Those are going to be anywhere from 10 days to 3 weeks. And then we have what we call summer missions. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's typically 6 to 8 weeks. Some go 10 weeks. Then we have semester missions, and that could be anywhere from 6 months to a year. So we have now obviously the majority go during the summer because that's when most are free. We will interview 163 on Saturday to go Christmas. So they're looking for places during their breaks when they go. And then the types of trips, just to give you an example, over Christmas break, one of the trips, they'll go to the hill country and do construction in the flood area. So it's going to be a hands-on, get in there, get your hands dirty. We're going to do that kind of thing. Another group is going to India, and they're going to be sharing the gospel. They literally will go with national partners out and share the gospel. So it's the full gamut of different things. You know, there will be a group that goes to New York City that are specifically going to be helping teach English to refugees and immigrants and working in that kind of setting. But we try to say, somebody might be ready, like there's that student who thinks, I could never share the gospel, but I can hammer. Great, then go and hammer. And in the process, we're also going to nurture you and teach you how to share the gospel so that you'll have that ability as well as it moves on. So we just we have different lengths of time, and then we're going to have different types of trips. And then we're going to have different levels of trips, more beginner, intermediate, more difficult, and then what we call edge.
Do they self-assess for those, or do you,
Oh, no.
through an interview
we
application
have a whole
process, you
process.
assess?
They
Or
fill
both?
out an online application. We also get 3 references. Then they're interviewed by their local ministry, whether that's their church or their BSM, and they say, is this student ready? And they also say, the student really wants to do such and such, but we don't think they're ready for that. You know, like, you're a freshman and you want to go for a year. Maybe we ought to talk about, a first step. So they have that kind of assessment locally because we want someone who knows them. And then they actually come, whether it's a day, we even actually have a weekend for the ones who are going to go for the full summer. They come for a whole weekend and we get to know them. It's like a Disciple Now setting. And then we make the appointments. Now, part of what we do during that, like we'll take spiritual gift tests and we'll do some different things to help them begin to learn about themselves. So it's an assessment process, yeah. And I'd be glad to share all of it with you.
Okay, where's your thought?
I love kind of piggybacking, talking about the breaks. I mean, that's for students, they want to fill their breaks in meaningful ways. So for us, we fill breaks as well. Winter break, spring break, May. We actually don't do much summer though, because they're usually gone to like long summer internships or jobs or whatever. But ours are housed in our disciplines. And so I've got a team of engineering going to create water filters, and I've got nursing students going to work alongside medical partners. And I love that piece for us. Because some of that is already then, like, the partners are like, you can't touch them. So I don't need a freshman going to do surgery on a patient by any means. Even though I think some of our freshmen are like, I can go do this. And I'm like, no, you can't. And then they see a surgery and they pass out, and I'm like, I told you couldn't do that. But then we have faculty and staff who are with them who then get to process. Hey, you did pass out when you saw that blood. But guess what? Most people do their first time, and so don't let it be a crisis yet of like, I need to switch my major. And they are there walking them through that. But our hope is sitting there, so we get to inspire this next generation to see what does it mean to use my vocation as a calling, and maybe I'm living missionally day in and day out through my engineering degree, through my music and how I am doing that, and am I a doctor in an under-resourced community or even abroad? But we have just as much here needs of what we can do. And so I love that we get to do that in their breaks. And so they're looking for meaningful ways to spend that time, and we come alongside and send them with, like I said, global partners who are experts in their community and faculty and staff who are there to help process with them. And I think that is a really neat piece for
And they
us.
love if there's a way to use their major. And it also makes it a little easier on the parents, because the parents will say, oh, this is going to look good on the resume. That's not the reason to go, but hey, if it helps, that's all right. And we encourage students when we say, if you can get a professor that's willing to let you make this an independent study, I'll sign any piece of paper so you can get credit. Because a lot of times what they're doing, we had a team that was doing videography for the summer. They were traveling the whole Texas Rio Grande. And one of the students got credit for it. It's like, that's great. And what that does is that's transformational, because then they see my major, what I'm studying to do with my life is useful, and it will be something I live out. Yeah.
Since we're kind of talking about it, I would love to hear your thoughts on kind of the connection and the ways that a person can maybe go on a mission trip and then have a service experience. Like, how do you see those two pieces of their life coming together and being related? Because I think a lot of people might think that they are not quite, I'm doing a mission trip over here, but I serve as a mentor to an elementary school student, and those are very different. What are ways that you could say, those two things are in fact related, and they do have a lot of bearing on one another?
Well, it's funny. Just a real life example from my own upbringing. Like, my mom worked with hospice patients. She worked in like a nonprofit that did second opinion panels. She organized events for Ronald McDonald House. She did like all these things locally, but for a long time was like, I could never go. And did all of these things locally, but had all of these reasons for which she was like, I just don't think away is mine to do. And then my dad, kind of oppositely, like, didn't do any of those things. And a friend invited him to go on a trip, and he was like, yeah, sounds awesome. I've not been to that country. And so he actually said yes, like, because of the interesting nature of the going experience. But then now, like, many years later, like, my mom eventually went on a trip. Like, she got over some things that were barriers for her, but like the way that those, in almost opposite ways, compelled them into a life of more consistent loving their neighbor. And I think it's just important to recognize that can happen in both settings. It can happen down the street and it can happen across the world. And like, I don't think God calls us to like one or the other, but to live a life of neighboring. Mm-hmm. And so I think they both have their role. You know, sometimes one feeds the other. It's somebody that goes on a trip that then comes back and says, whoa, how can I do this here in Waco? And you're like, yes, let me introduce you. But just recognizing that like the whole world and all the people are God's, and so that requires different resources and investment and things like that. But that it's all for the same purpose.
I always say, I tell students, God calls you to people, not places. So if you come to me and say, oh, I have a heart for orphans, that is wonderful. Are you as willing to go and be at Texas Children's Home and serve the orphans that are right here in your town as you are to go to South Africa? And to help them realize, oh, if I've got a heart and passion for this, if I've got some of the skills and abilities, that it should be about where can God put me in, coach, and it doesn't have to just be way over there. And it makes them stop and think, oh, do I really have a passion about orphans or about going to South Africa? And so that's good. Or to even, like, we'll ask the questions, you want to go to XYZ country to share and get to know and share the gospel with college students. Do you know an international student on your campus? Like, are you doing it here? What are you doing here? Are you willing to walk across the street before you get on a plane to go? And that you always keep them connected. Because the reality is the trip's over in a week or two. This is real life here. Yeah. Now, some of them are going to end up going back and being, that's going to be real life for them. And that's awesome. But the majority are not. The majority are going to become nurses and engineers and teachers. Yeah.
And I think the hope is that then they see maybe one of these things as a catalyst to opening our eyes and realizing, you said, like, everything is a missional living. And so how I'm living daily carries the word of Christ. And that, do my actions show that? Does my life show that? And a lot of times serving in, whether it's locally or globally, in that trip experience, are the catalyst for that, as long as they have that discipling factor and or that person by them. And so maybe it is you guys, as you're starting this ministry, or the friend that's in your accountability group that says, hey, I've noticed this change in you. What do we do to keep it going? And, you know, what about this is your next step? And so being that for people and walking alongside them with that.
And having what we call I see in you conversations, because if someone's involved, you know, Molly's got him involved in a ministry here, a service thing in Waco, and you see that student really excels at that thing. Like the guy with the math. And you say, I see in you this ability. Let's talk about how you could take that to the next level. Yeah.
It's a really great tool for connecting service and missions and any, you know, desire to do those things into the rest of their life, right? What we don't want is it to just be one touch point and done. We want that transformation, and so that's a great tool to do
I think one of the things that is neat about trips is they offer a concentration of time. So you set aside certain distractions. You're not scrolling Instagram every evening, like, you know, theoretically. Like there's certain things that get sort of left out of a window of time, and like going on a retreat, you know, there's things that God does in our lives when we kind of linger. And along those lines, because trips are not always reachable for all of our students or for a variety of reasons, planning, like last spring break, there's a local-ish service trip that was in Austin and in Dallas, and to give students like a saturation of time in serving, but also in processing and experiencing without getting on a plane and going far away, but allowed for like that concentration of time that I think is so valuable. Because when you just run and go do the thing and then you're back into your regular routine, sometimes you miss some of the processing and transformation. Yeah.
I also did not leave time for other questions. Were there other people that had questions for the panel? All right. Well, do you guys want to share any final thoughts or any, what service really? I know we've talked a lot about how you shape your planning, but how has it shaped your lives personally? Or if you have any final thoughts you want to share for the group.
I think having been in a lot of years in ministry context, church context, and now in this, when you're doing for others, you're planning, you're structuring, you're coordinating. It's good to also keep in mind that like pause, self-assess, self-reflect, and I'm saying this probably because I find it really challenging to do, but that like, oh wait, I'm helping other people think about these things. How is that forming me? How is this working on my soul? How is God growing me through these experiences? That always exists in all of sort of the service role. We often are others focused, whether that's those that we're serving or those that we're helping to serve. But being attentive to working through that ourselves, I think, is so important.
Yeah, one of the things that I do is I make sure I go and lead a trip. Because a lot of times you're setting up the trips. And setting up the trip is very different than actually going with the college students and leading them. And it's good to remember, oh, this is what it's like. I need to remember this is what I throw students into. Yeah. So going personally I think is very important. Doing, whether that's spring break or on a regular basis, whatever. But as we were thinking of this seminar breakout, the verse that comes to mind, and I think it fits so well, is in Luke 24, verse 46. He also said to them, "This is what is written. The Messiah would suffer and rise from the dead on the third day, and repentance for forgiveness of sins would be proclaimed in his name to all the nations beginning in Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things, and look, I am sending you as my Father promised." But I love that it already connects all the nations beginning in Jerusalem. So, yeah, Jesus said it, so it must be true that it really is all connected.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think, kind of piggybacking, we've talked about it, just the doing ourselves is transformational. And so if you're thinking about what has shaped me, if you would have told me when I was leaving college, I would, have done inner city ministry, I would now be planning mission trips. Like, those are not those things that I thought probably wasn't even thinking where I would be, but let alone in Waco doing that. I always joke because we moved to Waco when my husband started seminary, and I told him 3 years and we're out. We moved here in 2004, so.
Is he still getting his degree?
No, he graduated. And then we just kept spinning, and then he went back for doctorate, and and all the things. But I think so much of just the saying yes to those moments shapes who we are and how we do the things that we do, and then get to influence those around us in those spheres. But if I would say no to different things or different pieces, you see, like, oh, that wasn't the best. Like, that wouldn't have been a great wheelhouse for me because, again, it wasn't that good fit. And so, again, I would never have dreamed that I could do inner city ministry, and I love it. Like, spending time with families and people and, you know, sitting in what this looks like with kids coming from traumatic backgrounds, but getting to go sit with them and their grandparents as we talk through what's next steps or what are we doing here. It just is that beautiful piece that then I get to now take and facilitate with global partners who are dealing with inner city poverty in, you know, 19 countries that we're in this year. And what does that look like versus rural poverty that we're also dealing with? And all of these pieces shape us if we say yes. And so I think that's the part of being willing to say yes when you feel that, and being willing to say no when it's not the right fit and then not the right thing, or maybe it's that I need to take some self-care moments and do that. And so I think always just leaning into those.
Well, thank you all for sharing and for all of the wisdom that you've given. We are ending a little bit early, but if you want to hang out and talk a little bit more, I'm sure they would be happy to dive a little deeper, or you can have a few minutes back before the final session. So, thank you all for being here.
Thank you.